The Voyage of the OM-16. Written by Brent Michael Kelley. Read by Jordan Etheridge. "This is Captain Bob Roger Dwazzle of the OM-16. The captain barked at the blank comm screen. "I say again, this is Captain Bob Roger Dwazzle of the OM-16. Do you copy?" The screen remained blank. "Does anyone copy?" He pounded his fists on the arms of his chair. "Lieutenant Manalbandy." "Sir?" "Where are they?" Manalbandy squirmed. "They're gone, sir." "Do you see these two weird little balls in my face, just above my nose, Lieutenant?" "Sir?" Manalbandy straightened. "Because those are my eyes, Lieutenant." The captain stood, chest out. "I use them for all kinds of things, but mainly I use them for seeing things." He opened his eyes wide and pointed to them. "I also use them for noticing things that I think should be there, but aren't there. Isn't it amazing, Lieutenant?" "Sir?" Captain Roger Dwazzle rubbed his eyes mockingly. "And the main thing I'm using them to notice right now is that the fleet, of which we are a part, is quite clearly gone." Manalbandy looked outside the massive window at the empty space where the fleet had been. The rest of the flight crew on the bridge pretended they couldn't hear the captain berating the lieutenant. "So, maybe," the captain continued, "I don't exactly need you to tell me where the fleet isn't. Maybe I need you to tell me where it is." "Sir, yes, sir," said Manalbandy. "Well," the captain motioned for the lieutenant to continue, "where are they?" "Sir," Manalbandy blinked. "I don't know, sir." "Well, who does?" the captain snarled. "You and the XO are the only ones with access to orders from the fleet command, sir." Captain Roger Dwazzle narrowed his eyes. "You're damn right I am." Manalbandy sighed. "Sir, if you or the XO could—" "When did they leave?" demanded the captain. "Well," Manalbandy swallowed hard. "They left 45 minutes ago." "What?" the captain roared. "Where was I?" "You were practicing?" The captain threw his hands in the air. "Why didn't you interrupt me?" "Sir, the blast doors were—" "I don't want to hear about the blast doors," the captain boomed. Captain Roger Dwazzle called the chief science officer, Dr. Buttigieg, relieving Lieutenant Manalbandy at last. "The fleet is certain to notice we are not with them. They will wait for us when they drop out of warp." "It's standard procedure," declared the captain, as if it were his idea. "We just need you to release the fleet comms, and we can find them." Dr. Buttigieg smiled reassuringly at the lieutenant. "So, Captain?" He glared at her. "You just have all the answers, don't you, Buttigieg?" "No," she said. "I'm just familiar with the fleet's contingency procedures." "Oh," he tilted his head. "Why's that? Don't you trust your captain?" "Sir, the entire crew is tasked with mission preparedness. Can you just release the fleet comms so we can follow them?" "No." He sat back down in his chair and spun to face away from her. "Sir?" She moved to get in front of him, but he spun away. She tried to grab the chair's armrest, but he spun a little further before she could. Dr. Buttigieg grabbed the back of the chair and turned him to face her. "Where are the fleet comms?" she demanded. Captain Roger Dwazzle rolled his eyes at her. "Fine. Pretty sure I deleted them." "Deleted them?" she said. "That's not even possible." He closed his eyes and tilted his head. "It is if you use your comment pad to record video." "No," she snapped, "not even then." "Well, you have to understand." He tried to spin away again, but she held tight. "If you fill it up with video, it needs to save on top of old stuff." "It wouldn't let you do that, Captain." She let out an exasperated sigh. The fleet was out of sight, but... "No, that's why you have Lieutenant Braffist change the access parameters." The captain shrugged. "Then you can overwrite." "What?" She looked over at Braffist, who sat stunned at his terminal. "Braffist isn't a lieutenant, sir. He's a sergeant." "Didn't you hear?" said the captain. "I promoted him." "Promoted him," she said. Captain Roger Dwazzle beamed. "Yes, for changing the access parameters on my comet." "Oh, God," Braffist whined. "I swear, I didn't know he was—" He gagged, clasped his hands over his mouth, and ran off the bridge. "I'm demoting you back to sergeant, Braffist," shouted the captain after him. Dr. Buttigieg sat down, stunned. "What have you done?" "As far as..." The captain looked unsure. "As far as getting us separated from our fleet in deep space." Her eyes twitched with fury. "If we really can't recover the fleet comms, then we are in far worse trouble than you realize." "Oh, don't be so alarmist." He gave her a dismissive wave. "They could come back looking for us." "They won't." She shook her head. "They've warp-traveled potentially millions of light years. For all they know, you dropped out of warp somewhere along the way. They can't burn up all the energy needed to come back when they don't even know if we're here. That's a risk the fleet won't take." "Then we can just catch up with them with short-surge warp jumps." He pounded his fist on his palm 3 times as some sort of demonstration. "You don't understand how big space is, do you?" She grabbed 2 pens from a nearby terminal and threw them both across the floor at once. "See those pens? On a cosmic scale, they are billions of miles apart now. Neither knows where the other is, and they have no means of communicating because they don't know where to point their signal." "Whatever," the captain shook his head. "If all else fails, we'll just head back to Earth, Dr. Buttigieg. It amazes me that a scientist like you can't figure out that we just follow our research probes home like breadcrumbs." "That would work," she said, "if our breadcrumb trail was linear. The fleet has dumped tens of millions of probes between here and Earth, and 137 other fleets have been doing the same. There's no line to follow. It's a sea of probes, all moving in different directions to collect different data." The captain rolled his eyes. "Then we'll jump to intergalactic space, locate the Milky Way, and use pulsar mapping to find our way home." "Really, CSO Buttigieg, it's upsetting that I have to tell the science officer how science works." He laughed, and some of the command crew joined in with a nervous chuckle. CSO Buttigieg felt her hands trembling with anger. "Captain, our fleet has jumped to 36 different galaxies since we embarked. From this position, the Milky Way is one of millions of nearly identical galaxies." "Well, you just have an answer for everything, don't you, Buttigieg?" Captain Roger Dwazzle stood straight, with shoulders back and chin held high. "I do not think well when I am being screamed at by subordinates. If you will excuse me, I will be in the cargo bay, clearing my head." Dr. Buttigieg's jaw dropped as she watched him leave. After a moment or two of stunned silence, she stood and, in her firmest voice, said, "Someone find Braffist and get him working on the captain's comet. Everyone else, start looking for other ways to recover fleet comms. They were transmitted through the ship before they went to his comet. Find something. She turned to leave. Where will you be if we find something? Asked Lieutenant Manalbandy. Striding toward the door, she shook her head. I need to wake up the XO.
Who's there?
Demanded the XO. I told you, this is Chief Science Officer Buttigieg, she snapped. We need you on the bridge, and we need you there now. When he didn't reply, she mashed the intercom's buzz button some more and pounded on the XO's door. Executive Officer Spantax, this is a bloody emergency. The door slid open, and the XO leaned into view. His expression was equal parts frustration and bewilderment.
So tell the bloody captain.
The captain is the problem, sir. Dr. Buttigieg didn't wait for an invitation. She swept into the XO's cabin with her chin high and hands clenched in fists. You need to get to the bridge immediately, so you may be briefed. The XO nudged past her and blocked her from entering farther.
Why,
He glanced over his shoulder at his bed, then turned back to Dr. Buttigieg.
Why can't you handle the, issue?
The fleet has warped without us.
Oh, is that all? Oh.
He yawned.
I thought it was something serious.
How much more serious could it get? The XO furrowed his brow.
Well, we could have been infected by aliens.
Dr. Buttigieg closed her eyes and held a palm to her forehead. This can't be real.
Everything will be fine.
He reached out as if to put his hand on her shoulders, but he froze before touching her. His hands fell back to his sides as his gaze flicked back to his bunk.
Everybody just needs to calm down. Maybe rest a minute. Communications restored in the captain's comet unit.
He overwrote the files. The XO tilted his head.
Huh. Can he do that?
Apparently so. She stepped closer to him. What about your comet? Don't you have one as backup? He tried to usher her to the door.
My comet unit won't be a problem.
She stood fast. What could you possibly mean by that?
Oh, the captain stole it while I was, sleeping,
he said with a drowsy nod. If he stole it while you were sleeping, how do you know it was him?
To be precise, I was pretending to sleep.
The XO shrugged.
I didn't want to disturb the captain while he was about his business.
Dr. Buttigieg stepped backwards. What did he do with it? The XO yawned again and started for his bed.
I'm sure I don't know, Dr. Jambooty.
It's Buttigieg, she snapped.
Huh,
said the XO as he flicked the light switch.
I'll have to look into that.
I don't suppose you know where he went after he left here.
As it happens, I have full access to the ship's security system.
He wrinkled his nose at her.
As it further happens, I wanted to make sure he was gone before I laid back down for a bit of, frankly, much-needed rest.
So, she twirled her hand. Where did he go?
He was on his way to the propulsion deck when I switched my screen off.
Why would he go there? She asked, more to herself than to him.
XO Spantax fluffed his pillow. If you could catch the light on your way out...
Get to the bridge, shouted Dr. Buttigieg, before snatching a glass from the table and hurling it at the wall. It exploded into a million pieces as she stomped away.
Where will you be?
Propulsion, she said without turning back. A hurried walk and an elevator ride later, Dr. Buttigieg had arrived on the propulsion deck. Chief Engineer Schleschel waited just inside the entry door, exactly as if he had been expecting her. No doubt the XO had called down to warn the chief engineer she was on her way. Mr. Schleschel, she began. It's actually Schleschel, he corrected. I don't give a damn what it is, said Dr. Buttigieg. Mr. Schleschel looked at the floor. Yes, ma'am. She grabbed him by the shoulders. Has Captain Roger Dwazel been here? His sad frown became a confused frown. Of course he has. He's in command of the ship. Dr. Buttigieg shook her head. No, I mean in the last few hours. Has he been here? May I ask why you want to know? He asked. As my direct subordinate? No, you may not. His sad expression gave her pause. Deciding the situation was plenty serious enough to tell the chief engineer, she said, I'm sorry. The fleet has gone to warp without us. The captain has overwritten the memory on his comet unit and possibly the Exos comet too. Without comms, we have no way to find the fleet. Ah, said Mr. Schleschel. So you need me to tell me if the captain has been here. She backhanded him across his upper arm. Well, yes. He rubbed his arm. He was here. Mr. Schleschel, this is very important. Did he... Sorry, he said. It's actually Schleschel. I know it is, she snapped. Sorry, my tongue doesn't twist like that. But this is important. Yeah. His shoulders sank as he looked back down at his feet. Did he do anything strange, take anything, or give any unusual orders? I can't tell you that. What? She asked. Why not? Captain's orders. Dr. Buttigieg stepped in close, almost nose to nose with him. What did he do down here, Mr. Schleschel? She pronounced his name very carefully. At hearing his name spoken correctly, a sad smile spread across Schleschel's face. I guess there's no harm in telling you. He wanted to know if we had a way to enlarge something. Something? She asked. Like what? Organics. Organics? He nodded. A living organism. Dr. Buttigieg pinched the bridge of her nose. Why? Did he say anything else? Like, why? I'm afraid not. What did you tell him? Asked the doctor. Schleschel swallowed and frowned. Well, I said it could be possible with a stationary object encased in a continuous energy field, provided that... What is he up to? She turned her back to him. Don't do anything, Mr. Selschels. She made swiftly for the exit. He called after her to correct the pronunciation of his name, but she had more pressing matters to attend to. By the time she arrived at the cargo bay, Dr. Buttigieg had broken quite a sweat. No doubt the perspiration was visible through her thin gray uniform, mostly around the armpits and upper back. Not that it mattered, under the circumstances. The door to the cargo bay was guarded by a pair of security officers, a man and a woman seated at a small table. The man guard saw her approaching, but he quickly turned his attention back to their card game. The woman guard glanced over her shoulder at Dr. Buttigieg, but she too was more interested in the card game. Neither paid the CSO more mind than that until she started keying entry codes into the keypad next to the cargo bay entry door. Hey, you're not allowed in there, said the lady guard. Only the captain can go in there. The cargo bay? She said. The cargo bay is off limits? Captain's orders, said the man. She thought fast. Listen, you two, the captain has ordered me to join him in the cargo bay. If you want to tell him you're not letting me in, please go tell him so I can go about my business. We can't go in there, said the man. Yeah, said the woman. Nobody can. Then you'd better go tell him that. She put her hands on her hips. I'll wait right here. The man reached for the button to open the door, pressed his thumb onto the thumb pad, and stood in front of the open door. He took a step, froze, and turned back to Dr. Buttigieg. You sure you have orders? Dr. Buttigieg shoved past him and strode into the cargo bay. The door slid shut behind her. The first thing she noticed was the arrangement of the cargo containers. Several had been shifted to create a sort of ring, and Dr. Buttigieg had a hunch that was where she'd find the captain. She climbed the ladder on the backside of a container and crept forward to see what he was up to.
"Easy, girl, easy," she heard Captain Roger Dwazzle say. "Come on, honey, we have to keep training."
As he came into view, she saw the creature to which the captain spoke. It wore a harness on its head, which Captain Roger Dwazzle had no qualms about jerking roughly.
"Let me up there, sweetie," said the captain. "I just want to ride you a little, and then you can go back to your cage."
Dr. Buttigieg had to think for a moment to identify the animal. Unless she was greatly mistaken, this creature was called a telefrax. The telefrax was most famous for its use in the barbaric space rodeos. This specimen seemed small, possibly a juvenile. The beast's long snout was bound shut by the harness, keeping rows of dagger teeth safely tucked away. Its long neck bristled with black spines that stuck out in contrast from its armored powder-brown hide. Its tail should have been over twice the length of its neck, but this telefrax's tail had been docked. The captain gave another rough yank on the harness, then swung up onto the animal's back. It snorted and huffed and shimmied backward until it pushed up against a cargo container. "Jump around, damn you!" the captain shouted. Dr. Buttigieg had seen enough. "Captain Roger Dwazzle, what is the meaning of this?" "Huh?" He jerked his head around, trying to see where the voice had come from. "Gary? Is that you?" "Up here." She waved her hands overhead. "Oh, it's you. How did you get in here?" "Why are you torturing that animal?" she demanded. Captain Roger Dwazzle slid off the telefrax's back and shooed it away. Immediately, it ran to the cargo container that served as its home. "Damn you," the captain snarled as he stomped over to Dr. Buttigieg. "I told everyone 1,000 times. I need to practice." She folded her arms and looked down at him. "Practice? Practice what?" He squinted up at her. "Wouldn't you like to know?" "I certainly would," she said, "and the rest of the crew might be interested too." He dabbed sweat from his forehead and spat on the floor. "I'm preparing, as you know." "Don't dodge me like that, sir. What the hell are you preparing for?" Captain Roger Dwazzle stuck out his chest and raised his head. "I'm preparing for the interstellar rodeo on Thabo. I will win, and nothing can stop me." "Rodeo?" she muttered to herself. "He's training for a damn rodeo while we're lost in deep space? Don't you dare cheapen my efforts!" A sob welled up in her throat, but she willed it back down to the pit of her stomach. "Sir, why in the hell are you training for a rodeo?" "Don't get so high and mighty, Buttigieg. I'm doing this for a noble reason." He pointed to his heart. "Telefrax riding is the hottest thing in the galaxy right now, and the winner takes home enough money to write their own damn ticket. Forever." "So you want to be rich? Great." "That's not it at all," said the captain. "I just want custody of my son back." "Your son?" Dr. Buttigieg had never heard of the captain having a son. "That's right," he told her. "Little Merwin. His mother took him, and she cut me out of his life. I just want a chance to be a father to my boy." "Don't you..." Dr. Buttigieg struggled to find the words. "Don't you think there might be a better way to get your son back than competing in some stupid rodeo?" "Oh, like what?" he asked. When she didn't reply quick enough, he said, "See, not so easy, is it?" Dr. Buttigieg climbed down the ladder at the end of the cargo container so she could look her captain in the eye. "So if I understand this correctly, you have endangered this ship and crew so you could ride your 90-pound, half-starved alien horse lizard and somehow get custody of your son?" He held his head high. Yes. Her mouth hung open as she blinked at him. But you don't understand the full picture, he said. Please enlighten me. A proud smile formed on his face. I've figured out a solution. The faintest hint of hope flitted through her mind. You have? Yes. He pointed to the cargo container that the Telefrax had gone into. I'm going to enlarge it. She grimaced. Enlarge what? The Telefrax, of course. Dr. Buttigieg buried her face in her hands. This can't be happening. That sucker's gonna be huge. Captain Roger Dwazzle spread his arms wide to illustrate. Then I'll ride it every day, get really good, and win that damn rodeo. She wanted to punch him, drag him to the floor, claw his eyes out. But that would solve nothing. Dr. Buttigieg took a deep breath and let it out. Okay, Captain. Let's enlarge the Telefrax so you can win the rodeo and get your son back. Finally, he blurted, some goddamn support. Oh no, she said. Huh? Captain, we can't get you to the rodeo. We're lost out here. His brow furrowed. That is a problem. But wait, she went on. What if we met back up with the fleet? Why, then we could get you to the rodeo so you can get little Merwin back. He stroked his chin. Yes, we've got to meet up with the fleet. To do that, we'll need to recover those fleet comms. The captain bit his lip. Without my comet, what about the XO's comet? She asked. He said you have it. Of course! The captain's eyes widened with triumph. We can get the comms from the XO's comet unit. Great, she said. Where is it? It's in my locker in the fitness pod, he said. Her smile faded a bit. Dare I ask why it's in your locker? To keep it safe from the XO, of course. Sir? The man is seldom conscious. He's apt to do anything and think it's a dream. She tilted her head. Didn't you hand-pick your XO? He shrugged. I was in a completely different place back then. She grabbed his sleeve and started pulling him toward the exit. Okay, Captain, you get to the bridge and get the command crew ready. I'll go to the fitness pod and get the XO's comet from your locker. The combination is 56789. Of course it is. They exited the cargo bay and the guards snapped to attention. Not a moment to spare, Dr. Buttigieg, said the captain. Get the comet. I'll see you on the bridge. She ran for the fitness pod. Finally, they could reunite with the fleet. Dr. Buttigieg was quite out of breath and dripping with sweat when she sprinted onto the bridge of the OM-16. Lieutenant Braffist, she panted, take this and get the fleet comms off of it. He hurried to her, and she thrust the comet into his hands. He rushed back to his terminal as she caught her breath. A bit of a scare, said the XO with a grin. And to think, Dr. Buttigieg said between breaths, all this was some bizarre scheme to regain custody of his son. His son? The XO shrugged. Does he have another son besides Merwin? Dr. Buttigieg's smile began to fade. Merwin? No, that's who he was talking about. The XO scratched his chin. Well, he wouldn't get custody of Merwin. What? Merwin is, The XO cleared his throat and looked around. Merwin is a grown man. He's what? Dr. Buttigieg stepped closer. Merwin Roger Dwazzle is an adult. The XO licked his lips a few times. And quite successful, too. He manages most of the mining colonies on Venus. No. The Venus colonies were built by... Oh, God. Dr. Buttigieg's voice felt tiny as it left her mouth. Roger D. Merwin.
Quite so, said the XO. They said Venus was impossible to colonize, but Roger D. Merwin made it possible. Not sure why he changed his name like that, though. I guess there may have been some tension within the family. Not my place to ask.
Her legs felt weak. She staggered to her terminal and plopped into her chair. We need to find the captain now.
Find me for what? The captain asked as he strode through the door. Are we ready to go to warp?
He sat in his command chair and tapped a button on the armrest. The giant screens filled with the captain's strategic display dashboard.
Let's go!
Braffist, called Dr. Buttigieg, tell me you have something. Well, Sergeant Braffist began. Then he said nothing. Braffist! Dr. Buttigieg shouted in a hoarse voice. Report!
Yeah, out with it, Braffist, said the captain.
Sir, I believe someone has opened this comet unit and tampered with it. Tampered? Dr. Buttigieg sunk in her seat. Of course. I may be able to recover the data, said Braffist, once I clean out the peanut butter. Dr. Buttigieg pounded her terminal. Peanut butter? Really, Captain?
Don't look at me, Buttigieg.
The captain pointed at the XO.
Talk to Spantex. It's his comment.
Exospantex grimaced.
Sleepwalk, the captain said with a laugh. He does all sorts of weird stuff in there.
Oh, God, muttered Dr. Buttigieg.
I sure do.
The XO chuckled.
That's why I stole it and put it in my locker.
Captain Roger Dwazzle raised his chin high and smiled triumphantly.
But it doesn't matter.
Your son... Rodeo... A moan escaped Dr. Buttigieg's mouth as she put her head down on her terminal.
I said it doesn't matter.
The captain's voice became stern and decisive.
Exospantex, ready the crew for transit.
The XO flicked a switch at his terminal to broadcast his words through the whole ship.
All crew, ready for transit. All crew, report for maneuvering watch. This is not a drill. Repeat, all crew, ready for transit. All crew, report for maneuvering watch. This is not a drill. Finally done, Mr. Spantex, said the captain.
He keyed a button on his armrest.
Mr. Schmeshmel, are you there?
Yes, sir. Chief Engineer Schleschel's voice came through a speaker on the command chair. It's actually Schleschel, sir.
Okay then, Mr. Schleshner. Is propulsion ready?
Schleschel sighed. Yes, sir.
And shields engaged per my updated specifications?
Dr. Buttigieg perked up at that. Updated specifications? Yes, sir, said Schleschel. Sir? What updated specifications? Asked Dr. Buttigieg.
Don't interrupt the captain,
said the drowsy-eyed XO.
Mr. Selzerscher, prepare to energize shields on my mark.
Energize shields? Asked Dr. Buttigieg. They're energy shields. They're already energized.
We're going to energize them more, said the captain. Use them like a rubber band.
What?
Selzerscher, what was that word you said about this recent something?
Resonant amplification, said Schleschel.
What?
Dr. Buttigieg repeated.
We don't have time to explain, the captain barked.
Selzerscher, full power to the shields. Mark.
Aye, aye,
said Schleschel. Whatever he did then, the whole ship shook. Lights flashed on electronics. Every speaker crackled and hummed. Then the speakers fell silent. Lights and monitors blinked off. The ship vibrated in the dark, but light began to shine in from the exterior windows. The light grew brighter, and the vibrations grew stronger. The panicked crew screamed and clung to each other.
Calm down,
yelled the captain, barely audible in the commotion. The light became blinding, and the vibrations seemed like they'd end with an explosion at any moment. And then the vibrations stopped. The light pouring in the windows dimmed. The ship's systems rebooted, and interior lights flickered to life. No one dared move or speak. Captain Roger Dwazel's laugh broke the silence. "It worked!" The crew sent up a cheer. "Mr. Solsishi, The captain trailed off, but Mr. Schleschel didn't reply. Dr. Buttigieg activated her own comm switch. "Mr. Schleschel? Propulsion, are you there?" No reply. "Must be a comm glitch," said the captain. "No matter. Manelbandy, report." "This isn't right, sir," whimpered Manelbandy. "What isn't right, Lieutenant?" demanded the captain. "Sir, we are in empty space." "Space is a vacuum, Manelbandy," the captain barked. "It's supposed to be empty." Manelbandy wriggled in his seat. "Sir, what I mean is, we can't locate any stars. It's as if..." He trailed off, but Dr. Buttigieg was looking at the same data he was. "I'll take it from here, Lieutenant," said Dr. Buttigieg. She hit a key on her terminal, and her display appeared on the giant command screen. Sensors indicate a curved wall in front of us, like some kind of force field. Instrumentation suggests it's probably spherical. There are thin filaments like tiny spider webs all through this bubble we're in. The captain stroked his chin thoughtfully. Dimensions. The bubble diameter looks to be roughly 207 kilometers. Dr. Buttigieg squinted at the display. "Could it be a malfunction of the ship's energy shield?" asked the XO as he rubbed his left eye. "I don't think so," said Dr. Buttigieg. "The bubble completely obscures anything beyond it. If it were our energy field, we'd still be able to receive some data from the other side." Captain Roger Dwazel squinted at the screen. "Can we blast through?" "Probably, yes," said the XO. "No, Captain." Dr. Buttigieg held her hands up in a halting gesture. "We don't have enough information to make that decision. We don't know what this bubble is. We could set off a chain reaction that would..." "I concur with the XO," interrupted the usually taciturn gunnery officer Magnolia. "Mr. Spantex," the captain said, "tell me more about your theory on this." The XO pointed up at the giant screen. "Well, we, blast a hole through the bubble, and, then we fly out, and then we go home." Captain Roger Dwazel nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, that seems like it'd work." "Captain!" He pointed at her angrily. "Buttigieg, if you don't clam up, I'll have you thrown in the brig." "I will not clam up," she snapped back. "You've teleported us inside a giant energy bubble or something, and we're lucky we didn't simply explode when you did." "Maybe we did explode," the XO yawned. "What if we enlarged?" "That is not possible." Dr. Buttigieg pointed at the screen. "Protons and electrons do not scale up." "Calm down, Doctor," said the captain. "Anything is possible with enough energy." "No, it isn't," she yelled. "Even if you could expand something by energizing it, the second you took the energy away, it would collapse to normal size." "I don't know about that," said the XO. "Protons and electrons have set sizes. Nothing can change those dimensions." Her eyes darted around the bridge, looking for someone, anyone who understood what she was saying. "Planck's constant." "Calm down, Doctor," repeated the captain. She stomped over to him and grabbed fistfuls of his jacket. "You listen here. If we were to shrink, our atomic density would increase until we became a tiny, black hole and winked out of existence. If we were to enlarge, our atomic density would decrease until our chemical bonds broke and every atom in our body disintegrated. It's not possible.
Maybe, though.
The Exo's arms were folded, his head rested against the back of his chair, and his eyes were closed.
See, said the captain, I told you, Budajim. Protons, photons, ectrons, it's electrons.
Dr. Budajim threw her hands up in the air. And no, photons aren't scalable either.
I disagree. Captain Roger Dwazzle waved her away.
It's not a matter of opinion, she shouted. Quarks make up everything, and they have no mass. Mass comes from the Higgs field, and unless you know how to uniformly and instantaneously bombard every particle on this vessel with Higgs bosons, then
maybe we increased the wavelengths of the Higgs field itself, or the energy or something,
said the Exo without opening his eyes. She blinked at him and spoke slowly. If we increased the energy of the Higgs field, it wouldn't be the Higgs field, right? It is defined by a specific range of... She trailed off.
What did Schellschler say about, resonant amplification, I believe he called it?
The captain smirked.
It's science, Doctor.
No. Oh, no. Was it possible? Whether it was or not, she had to admit that it certainly seemed like they had enlarged to a dangerous size. That, or the universe had shrunk all at once. Either way, this was bad. She needed time to piece it all together.
Dr. Budajim is right, announced Captain Roger Dwazzle. We have teleported inside some sort of egg or something, and it's time we hatched.
No, wait! She had to concentrate to keep from vomiting.
Fire lances 5 and 9, shouted the captain, even louder. 80% charge.
Aye. Gunnery Officer Magnolia tapped the screen of his tablet, and another burst of energy flashed out in front of the ship.
No, fire. Aye.
Filaments ignited around the ship like spiderwebs, burning up in an instant. The energy lance punched through the outer wall, and a moment later, the ship's automated warning system engaged. "Incoming," said the ship's digital voice as red lights flashed. The ship shuddered as, "Captain, we're taking fire from behind. Fire all rear lances and bring us about." Dr. Budajim sank to her knees as more energy bolts hammered the ship's shield. It shouldn't have been possible. Of the things that were possible and the things that weren't,
Captain, energy shields are failing. Whoever is firing on us is using energy bursts similar to our lances. Keep firing, roared Captain Roger Dwazzle. Fire all! Fire all!
No, Dr. Budajim wailed. It's the universe. Those are our blasts. Quiet, you. The captain sounded almost joyful. He pulled a key card from inside his jacket and shoved it into a slot on the command tablet.
Authorization code 934 Texas. Lances at max charge. Fire all on my mark.
It's the universe. Dr. Budajim sprinted for the captain, but another impact sent her flailing and rolling across the floor. Captain Roger Dwazzle caught her, held her, looked into her eyes.
3, 2, 1. Mark,
he said. Then he closed his eyes, parted his lips, and leaned in to kiss her. Every lance on the OM-16 fired at full power, blasting in every direction. Galactic filaments incinerated as the universe became a hellstorm. Alarms blared and lights flashed as every bolt of energy fired came back on the ship from the opposite direction. Dr. Buttigieg yanked the captain's sidearm from its holster and gave the trigger 3 rapid pulls. With wide, horrified eyes, she watched smoke issue from the blaster holes in the captain's abdomen. I'm assuming command, she shouted as she spun and pointed the gun at various crew members. Hold all fire! Fire was held. The stunned crew gaped at Dr. Buttigieg, then at the dying captain. Damage report! Dr. Buttigieg's voice cracked. Sir, said Lieutenant Manalbandy, I mean, ma'am, shields are offline. The hull is intact. Life support systems are at 85%. All cargo bays have been purged. No, groaned Captain Roger Dwazel. Then, with his final gurgling breath, he said, Daddy's coming home, son. Manalbandy continued reading from his tablet. Artificial gravity pod is breached, and we have about 3 hours of normal gravity before decline. Okay. Dr. Buttigieg licked her lips. Why was she so thirsty all of a sudden? It's not ideal, but we can patch this up. And lastly, ma'am, said Manalbandy, Reactor 6 has ruptured. What? She ran to him and snatched the tablet from his hands. Warning flashed on the screen in large red letters. She dropped the tablet and looked up at the giant display screen. It showed only black. Doctor, someone said. Smoke 'em if you got 'em, was all she could think to say. When Reactor 6 exploded a millisecond later, the other 23 reactors followed almost instantaneously. In a flash, too fast for sound, the reactors unleashed their energy in all directions, through the outer edges of the universe. The energy returned from the polar opposite position. What had gone out was now coming back. The wake of the energy wave pulled behind it the charred remains of all matter, imploding as suddenly and violently as it had exploded. All the energy and substance of the universe dove inward, an imploding hellstorm accelerating down towards a single point. Infinitely small, infinitely hot, infinitely unstable. The end.